Alrighty, uh, Alex, welcome back to my channel, man. Uh,
Carlos, feels good to be back.
it's really great to see you. And congratulations, of course, on coming second in your recent natural bodybuilding competition. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. I did my best and I wanted to show what was possible as a real natural who's just been documenting the entire journey for so many years now. And I think I brought hell of a package.
Yeah, you did, man. You did. Um, the first thing I need to kind of recap my memory on this. What natural bodybuilding show was that exactly? Which one was it?
So it was the Mike Clement Natural Classic,
Okay.
which is with the CPA Federation, Canadian Physique Alliance, I believe.
Yeah.
And it's hosted once a year. It's been going on for probably well over a decade by this point.
Cool.
So it was a big event because, after global situations were finished,
Yeah.
everyone was wanting to compete. They were ready for it. So full house, I couldn't even have a lot of my family members or friends show up because they couldn't buy tickets. Like from the very beginning, maximum competitors, the seats were taken. So it was definitely a lot of competition. And that it was perfect for me because I was considering competing the year before, but I didn't. So I'm like, okay, I'll do it next time. And 2023, that was the year where I brought my best and everyone else did as well. So it was wonderful to see how everyone went through similar things. And now we're just here to demonstrate.
Yeah, that's interesting you said that because I mean, you can imagine the improvement in physiques with people in lockdown, nothing to do,
Oh, yeah.
intense focus in training, and then you get a hell of a show.
Well, even in myself, I gained 5 pounds of muscle. If I would have done it last year, my physique, I would have weighed in the 140s,
Hmm.
which I know people hearing this right now are like, what? How can you weigh so little? But I'm only 5'5" for
Yeah.
one. But secondly, when you're actual contest shredded, it's a different ball game.
Hmm.
And I believe the bantam weight category for bodybuilding specifically is most common.
Yeah.
So you'll see guys that are in the 120s, 130s, 140s. And if you're like at the peak of that class weight wise, like you're like in the 150s low, like you're jacked,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. What was your overall feeling then about this experience, you think?
It was I mean, I don't regret any of it. It was a combination of good and bad in the sense that I got to finally reveal the muscle that I worked so hard to build.
Mhm.
Because I mean, it was always obvious having benched 405, doing a 242 OHB, 5-plate dip, 4-plate pull up. I mean, I don't want to flex, but I just had to throw it in there. But I had the gains, but underneath, it was covered with fat.
Yeah.
And guys never got to see just how much muscle was really there. So by doing that, I mean, I'm still in awe looking at those pictures. I'm still amazed at how incredible I looked. I didn't think it was possible because back in the day, I used to say naturals will not look big when shredded.
Hmm.
And this was around 2016. I was already jacked, but I didn't have the same level of musculature that I do now. And so it's really about experience. If you've been training for at least a decade the proper way and then you shred, yeah, you're going to look massive, but only with the shirt off.
Yeah.
And it's a very temporary state in the sense that you can't really maintain it. Maybe a maximum of 2 months, but after that, you're going to start rebounding. So I guess I'm most proud of the final outcome and that I stuck through to the end despite my energy being so low. Like I did my workouts. I was very strict with the diet. The training program was perfected. Every little nuance you can think of, from volume, intensity, exercise selection. I did everything right and all on my own because I didn't hire a coach. So the fact that I was able to come in second place with a bunch of seasoned dudes, because I forfeited my opportunity to compete with the novices. I was in the open category, right? Yeah, because I wanted competition. So I forfeited that. And I'm like, you know what? I want to go with guys who are on a similar level to myself. And that's basically what I got. And I went far. So I'm just proud of how everything turned out and just the whole process.
Damn, man, that you got freaking not bells are steel, balls are steel for that.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's
No, man,
I'm a fighter, man.
that's really like throwing yourself in the deep end. Then for your first comp, that's freaking.
Yeah, but I'm a guy who works well with pressure. I need that. I need like all eyes on me. Let's go. And I can't disappoint my audience, and I can't disappoint myself.
That's a good motto and good attitude to have. I mean,
Yeah, because let's say you don't show up shredded, you're fluffy on stage. I mean, there goes your credibility.
yeah, I agree. I mean, you just touched on how earlier you said that, you know, and I've said it myself, that in the past, at least, natural shows, you know, the guys look like prisoners of war. It's just skinny.
Yep.
And, you know. So how do you rate natural shows now, like versus what they used to be maybe 10 years ago when the natural scene was just really starting to come out?
The thing is, they still do look like prisoners of war, just with clothes on, and your face becomes gaunt. Like I store a lot of fat in the face genetically. I'm just round up here. But when I was single digit, you can see my cheekbones.
I've seen it. I've seen
Yeah,
it.
It was scary, and your eyes are like wide open. And the thing is, but what's crazy is that everybody looks like that backstage. We all look sick. And when you see them wearing their clothing, because you're supposed to like wear loose clothes so that the tan doesn't get ruined, not a single person looks like they lift. Everyone looks small, you know? And even if like you were to wear tighter clothes, it doesn't matter. You don't look big in clothes. It's only when you take it off and then you start pumping where everything gets crazy with the striations and whatnot. So I don't think that aspect has really changed, to be honest. And if I look at the top natty physiques from 10 years ago till now, they might have like 2 to 5 pounds additional muscle, but that's mostly because they've been training for longer, but it's actually the same guys. Like I look at Alberto Nunez. He actually did a comparison post recently on his Instagram, and you can see he put on 2 pounds of lean mass, I believe, from 2016 until now. Don't quote me on the exact time frame, but I think it was that. And he's just a little bit more shredded. So slightly more muscle, dialed in. That's basically what it is. But I think it's the time aspect. But overall, the physiques are not significantly different from 10 years ago.
Okay.
And you're still going to experience the same side effects. Like, it's just that the coaches are more experienced in dealing with the contest prep, and they themselves have acquired a little bit more muscle.
Okay. I was hoping you'd say the opposite, but if that's the case, you're the one that stepped on stage, not me. So would you say though at all whether maybe the amount of muscle mass has not improved, but has the recent, for example, online, explosion of information helped improve the natural physiques at all? Would you say that?
I'm not in a competitive. The thing is, we're talking about competitive bodybuilding, right? In that aspect, I'm not so sure. In terms of being fluffy, being generally lean, absolutely, we've seen a massive improvement. So there's a difference between, and the thing is, a lot of guys don't want to hop on stage. There's guys who have better natural physiques than me who they refuse to compete. And I can name one right now, Jeffrey Verity Schofield. He got shredded at the same time as me, actually a month later, and he would have smoked me in a competition. He would have smoked. Actually, I think he could have maybe competed at the WNBF and done very well, but he chose not to. So there's guys that aren't even showing up.
Yes.
So I think if we had more competitors, that's the issue. There's not enough people who want to do it. Then we would see an increase. So I think the advice is more so helping the off season.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's when you build the muscle, that's when you build the strength. And when you're dieting down to single digit, you're just trying to preserve it. So it doesn't really matter what you do with the training as much. It's really the diet that has to be perfected. And I think that's where, again, the knowledge actually does make a massive difference in terms of different peaking protocols. Like there was, I don't know if you're familiar with backloading, front loading, and all those. No.
No.
Well, those methods have changed. And that's just because the coaches have had more competitors to work with. So they know how to manipulate your water weight, come in a bit more sharp, etc. And actually, naturals can come in more shredded than enhanced users because we don't hold on to water weight the same extent.
That's true.
So I would just say dieting's been perfected in that way, in a competitive sense. But for gaining muscle, not so much.
Okay. However, you did mention that there's a new a new increase in the, I guess, mass of physiques, especially of those that stay off season, that just or just don't
Yes.
compete. And would you say that therefore there is like a new renaissance or a beginning of a new
Oh yeah.
golden era for naturals?
Yes. I call it the platinum era of natural bodybuilding.
Nice.
And, yeah, guys like you, Jeffrey Verity Schofield, Bald Omni-Man, Basement Bodybuilding. I can name a bunch of people, but everyone I've interviewed on my channel are good resources. And we're seeing a surge of people making amazing progress and smashing what they once thought was a natural limit. So the barriers are being broken, and we now understand that you can train for decades and continue to gain muscle. And of course, there are some natural competitors who are in their 50s now who look absolutely phenomenal. Jeff Alberts being the perfect example. So if you're putting on, 1 or 2 pounds of muscle a year, which I argue most people are going to put on more, but if it's as low as that, well, that adds up over the many decades. And even when it comes to muscular measurements, if it takes you 10 years to go from, say, 17 to 18-inch arms, which is a worst case scenario, well, that's still a whole inch on your arms. And imagine the rest of your body. So I definitely see things going well long term. There's more people in the space, there's more information, and the community is stronger than ever before. Like there was a time where I felt like I was alone, at least as it pertains to, the recreational lifter. Like either you were a full-on natural bodybuilder or a strength athlete, but there was no in between. And now we have those guys who want to be equally as jacked, but they don't necessarily compete, but they're still part of the community. And they still want the best for everyone else. So in terms of that aspect, it's the best it's ever been. Like I've never been so positive before.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, not only do you see just this incredible amount of information, good information out online,
Great information,
but you also see now the rise of new companies that are supporting people with garage gyms, like great example, Bells of Steel, and several others. And they're supporting this movement, of people not having to be stuck in the commercial gym world where, you're just using machines. And to be honest, that's for the pump club. Sorry. Yeah.
Well, I'll say this. I credit Bells of Steel to my leg development of the last 1.5 2 years, because I mostly use their SSB bar and the belt squat machine.
Yeah.
So with those 2 exercises, it did so much, And it's funny you mention that, because it's true. A lot of the best, we call them noble natties, have home gyms.
Yep.
And they can't be bothered to be around the fluff and pumpers, as you said. And there's something about training at home, just that intense environment. You can fully focus in, and it's nothing but hard work. Like a barbell is staring at you in the face. What are you going to do? There's no shortcuts. There's no secrets. You just got to put in the work, grind your ass off. And the barbell's not going to lie.
That's right.
So
that's right. Iron don't lie.
Yeah.
What do you think that are the most important factors now that we're talking about, garage gyms, training at home? What do you think are most important factors in developing then a good natural physique?
Like what equipment would be most conducive to growing an optimal? Okay. Well, in my opinion, it's a combination of traditional free weights and calisthenics. I think if you train at home, you need to do calisthenics. It's non-negotiable, says me. And the way that would work is, first of all, I think barbells are more not feasible, but there's more potential for progression with them than dumbbells, especially if you have the spin lock kinds, where they could be annoying to change or even low to a certain extent. Now, there's obviously no bells that you can purchase, but those usually go up to the 80 pounds, which really isn't heavy if you've been training for long enough. Like you can try to do barrel presses and slow down your tempo and pause and all that, but a barbell can be loaded much heavier. So I think that's the primary tool that's going to unlock maybe 70 to 80% of your gains, and then dumbbells will help supplement that. Of course, you can, buy Olympic dumbbells, throw on a bunch of 10-pound plates, and maybe hit 120 on those. Or you can get the Pepane dumbbells, which go up from 120 to say 170, but those are quite expensive. So I think the average person is going to do best with an Olympic bar, a very good power rack that is stable. And of course, if you can't get that right off the bat, then you need to weigh it down yourself. So instead of mounting your bars against the wall or in some weird stand, purchase additional J hooks, set them at the top, the rear of your power rack, and then just use that to anchor it down. And then get those little attachments on the side for plate pegs.
Yeah.
This way you can, so you need stability, because or else you can get injured. And you don't want your setup constantly moving around either. It could be annoying. So and safety straps, very important. And then a pull-up bar is going to come with the power rack, so you can do all your pull-up variations, wide grip, neutral, chin up. There's even the little angled ones as well. And then from there, you can hang off gymnastic rings, which is going to be your home cable setup. And there's nothing you can't do with that in terms of upper body development. Not to mention, you can even buy a cable pulley. It'll run you like $20-$30. Yeah. Loop it on top of the pull-up bar, clip on a loading pin, and then you can do everything from there. And if you want to do dual cables, just buy a second one. So for less than $100, you can mimic most of the common gym movements. And with that, there's nothing that you can't do. I suppose an additional feature would be buying bands and chains for accommodating resistance. Because if you go to a gym, like some of them, the best ones, they'll have access to Prime Fitness machines, which it's basically like they're biomechanically sound in the sense that they feature the correct movement patterns for every muscle, and you can adjust the strength curve because they have various plate pegs. Their positions are different. So if you want to bias more the lengthened position where you're stretching out the bottom portion of say a chest press, you can do that. If you want a combination of mid and short, well, you can put some plates at the bottom, some at the top, so you can change the way that is, right? But the thing is, these machines are very expensive. They could be like $5K a piece, right? Whereas if you work out at home, well, you can just attach bands or chains to your barbells, and now you can modify the strength curve to get those same benefits, So that's the original way that Louis Simmons figured out way before these machines became popular. And I was doing that for strength development and hypertrophy way back. And people thought I was crazy, but now it's funny how the hypertrophy world is discussing those concepts specifically. So I think barbell, power rack, gymnastic rings, pull-up bar, some accommodating resistance if you want. I mean, there's nothing you can't build off that,
I agree. I mean, with such a setup, you're just going to have pretty much your own perfect gym, It's fantastic.
It's perfect. Yeah. Oh, and you can do dips because you can get an attachment. So, and all this saves space. You'll have a little corner. You don't need a massive setup to build a body. I built my best body at home, and most of the time I didn't even have access to most of the things that people see now.
Yeah, I agree. And speaking now of building your body, and even there's a lot of people and their expectations in natural bodybuilding competition, how much time do you think is necessary for developing a foundation to your physique, the mass that you present on stage?
Be on stage, I'm going to say it depends on your genetics first and foremost, in the sense that there are some people who can train 2 or 3 years and do pretty good on stage. And I actually did see that at the competition. Now, a potential X factor there could be, what if they use performance enhancing drugs to speed up the progress? So I would say that's not most lifters. And certainly if I look at my own journey, back in 2016, I was saying I was not going to be big enough when shredded. And by that point, I already had quite a number of years of lifting experience. So if I look at that, I would say it's going to be a minimum of 5 years. Don't waste your time otherwise, 5 years, you should be strong at most of the major compound movements. You would have acquired at least 20 pounds of muscle, if not more. I'm being generous here. And then it's just a matter of preserving your muscle mass, because I think that's the real problem. If guys don't diet correctly, they're just gonna shrivel away, you know. So I don't think you need to be like super jacked, because as I point out earlier, if you look at the bantam weight category, you'll have dudes in the low 130s who look amazing on stage. So I came in at 150, but you can have someone that's 20 pounds less muscle than me who still looks pretty good. So he doesn't have to train 10 plus years to compete, you know. So I would say, you know, half that time is probably doable, though on a personal level, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
I'd want to bring my best up. I want to be at the end of the weight limit, not in the middle, you know?
Yeah, I agree. Like, I mean, from everything I've ever learned, even back in the old, you know, in the golden years, be it before steroids or after, most of the old school lifters would say a minimum of 5 years, some up to 10 years. And of course,
Yeah.
your own genetics and everything. But I just think many people are way too impatient to wait that long. They want results in 6 months and be on stage in 6 months, but it's just not going to happen, you know. So
no, unless you're the second coming of Ronnie Coleman or Arnold or Dorian, like it's not happening. And you would know if you were a genetic freak.
yeah.
So those are the exceptions. If you're that top 1%, and chances are you're not listening to this video, then I got nothing to say.
What do you now now we're talking about foundation mass, gaining mass, and the years it takes. Then what do you think are the most important benchmarks within this time frame that one should achieve before entering a natural bodybuilding competition?
Well, the easiest way to dumb it down is by looking at strength level.
Yeah.
It's usually, the thing is, it's not 1-to-1, especially when you get down to single digit body fat, you're going to lose the majority of that strength. But if we're talking about being at an off season fluffy state, then I think a good benchmark is to bench press at least 3 plates for 1 rep, squat somewhere in the 400s, and deadlift somewhere in the 500s if we're talking about the big 3.
Yeah.
And then calisthenics, maybe 100-pound pull-ups for reps, assuming your body weight is a minimum of 180 pounds. Not that you're 140 and able to do that.
It's pretty amazing.
So you know, I look at it from a strength athlete perspective, even though it's not, because it's hard. It's, you know, we're talking general here, not individuals. So
yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
I agree with that. I mean, you have to have a certain level of strength, functionality, which will back up your ability to actually create that muscle mass that you want. And I agree with you 100%.
It's just a correlation. And also, when you get down to single digit, because that strength is going to regress, you need that base to be high in order to still be considered somewhat strong when you're going to be on stage. So if you were benching 3 plates at a heavier body weight, well, when you're single digit, you might struggle with 2 plates.
Yeah.
But the thing is, 2 plates is not bad when you're that body weight.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
If you were fluffy hitting 2 plates, then you might have trouble doing 1 plate when you're single digit. So that's the thing. It's about having a decent enough strength level when you're single digit. But the only way to do that is if you were already strong when fluffy.
Exactly.
So that's why I'm basing this off strength.
Yeah.
You know, technically, like, you don't have to lift these numbers, but because you're going to get weaker, what else am I supposed to say? Because in my experience, that's what happened to the letter, you know?
Yeah. And it's not too different to what we saw in the past. I mean, I still remember and always get comments from people when we watch, you know, any of us watch Pumping Iron. A lot of people say, you know, Arnold is weak. He's only incline pressing 80 kilos. Yeah. Yeah. But you don't see the images of him looking fluffy doing 300 or 400 on the incline press, you know?
Exactly.
That's exactly what the point. So you're absolutely
and also the strategies that Arnold used, like incline benching to the clavicle. And if you look at his wingspan, it was massive. Like, replay those clips and you'll see doesn't look like me when I'm benching. So the fact is, if you use extended range of motion, correct form, and you're not built for a lift, you're still putting up somewhat respectable numbers at a contest level conditioning, it's pretty good.
Exactly.
You know, and in the off season, I believe he was squatting well over 500 for reps. I think he had a powerlifting background as well, or Olympic weightlifting, one of those two.
Both.
And 1,000-pound calf raises, right? So Arnold wasn't weak.
No, that's right.
Doing flies with 110s,
yeah,
80-pound dumbbells, you know.
And the incredible range of motion in doing them too.
That's the thing. Everybody does half reps, you know, especially on the incline bench. You know, I was guilty of this for a long time. You try to bring it low, say to your sternum level, just like a flat. But you know, when you have an arch going on, the distance from here to here, guillotine style, is very different.
Exactly. And it's going to hit a whole different range of muscles too. It's going to have a
lot more upper chest.
Yeah,
a lot more. And I learned that when I was cutting, actually, because you know, you lose a lot of your leverage advantages when you're lean like that. So whether you bring it low or high, well, might as well bring it to the highest point.
Yeah. Which exercise then now I just want to change slightly direction and start talking about the exercises, especially that you used to now develop your natural physique. What do you think then for a person that wants to do natural bodybuilding and even compete, which exercises would you say are best to concentrate to gain this mass and base and foundation?
You want me to talk about every muscle? Give you like a nice little top 10 list or something?
Just overall, like maybe pick 10 or something. I don't know, 5 or 10 or whatever.
Okay. Well, you know, obviously I'm biased towards old school training because that's how I built my physique. And I genuinely think that the silver era guys had much figured out. You know, even when the science is coming out today, it's just confirming what they already knew. And there were some things that I dismissed for a long time. The wide grip pull-ups being a prime example. And after introducing them in the last year and a half or so, it's done so much for my back that they're now my favorite pull-up variation, even above ring pull-ups. So was everything good on your end? Just curious.
Yeah, the camera just died. I told you, man. This
yeah. Okay. Well, there's a lot more to cover, so
there we go.
Okay, awesome.
No worries, keep going.
Yeah. So in terms of back development, I'm a firm believer of pull-ups being number one. And I would say it's impossible to have a small back if you're strong at pull-ups. And my standard has been a total weight of 300 pounds. Damn. For at least a single. But if you can do for 5 repetitions, then that's phenomenal. So that means if you're a 200-pound male, you should be doing weighted pull-ups with 100 pounds for reps. Yeah. If you're 150, there's the potential to do a 150-pound pull-up. Yeah. You know,
150 pounds. So that's you're talking now 3 plates, basically.
A bit over 3 plates, actually.
Yeah, a little bit over 3 plates.
And I know this because I've done 4 plates. So, and in the street lifting community, which is a sport where guys max out on the weighted pull-up and weighted dip, the numbers are even higher than that. So we're just scratching the surface on what's possible. So I think you need to focus on getting the strongest pull-up imaginable and use all the grips. This way you reduce overuse injuries and you maximize your back development, because one grip can't do it all. So if you want more lower lats, I want to be doing L-sit pull-ups. You want a neutral medium grip, ideally with spinal flexion. If you want more upper back, then you can arch on your pull-ups. And there's also range of motion differences, like doing chest to bar, Franco Columbo style, or just chin a little bit over, right? There's the super wide grip pull-up for those who are strong enough. There's reverse banded pull-ups. There's so many variations that I often talk about on my channel, but pull-up mastery is a secret to a phenomenal back. And I will say, not to be cocky, but I believe my back is world-class. I think it's WNBF level at a very high level, and it's because of that exercise. And then obviously, you know, you want the spinal rectors as well. And most people don't even have that. And you can see it when they turn around, they're posing, it's just flat. And that's because they're not strong at hip hinges, or they've dropped their bent over rowing exercises, which used to be very popular in bronze, silver, and golden age. So guys are doing only chest supported rows now, which is phenomenal if you just want to build the upper portion. But there's nothing wrong with bending forward, using correct form, which is full range of motion, not heaving the weights either as much, just doing it the proper way, right? Like deficit style. And that'll thicken up those spinal erectors. And you combine that with some hip hinges, deadlifting 500 to 600 as a 1 rep max for a good standard. That's going to get you far. We're doing good mornings with a minimum of 2 plates for reps. I'm at 285 right now. And, when you can bend over with that amount of weight on your spine, you can't have lagging spinal erectors. And it gives you the instant strength to deadlift big loads. Yeah. So I think that the hip hinges and the pull-ups are above all,
Absolutely. So, man.
Yes.
We're on exercises, and you were just talking about thickening the spinal erectors.
Yes. So I mentioned how introducing bent over rowing, at least having a foundation, is quite helpful. And there are people, like if you just build up to 2 plates for reps, which is totally achievable, that in itself will do wonders. So we're not saying that you need to live on bent over rows for the rest of your lifting journey, but at least have some experience with them instead of dismissing bending forward from day one and only doing chest support. Because the guys that I see do that, usually their spinal erector development is not impressive. So that's an easy fix, and then just having a generally strong deadlift of which you can drop them out afterwards, then switch over to good mornings or RDLs is perfectly fine. Or you can even do stiff-legged deadlifts, because you don't need to use the heaviest weight imaginable. It's all about stimulus to fatigue. And if you can get the same stimulus on your spinal erectors without having to put on as many plates on the bar, then that's a wonderful recipe. So that's why I like good mornings, because I can lift in 200s and get the same stimulus as deadlifting in the 500s for reps.
Yeah.
But it's personal preference. If someone doesn't feel comfortable doing that, they can do stiff legs, RDLs, using dumbbells for their hinges, trap bar. Everything works, but you can't avoid the hinging movements. And in my opinion, a back extension is not going to be enough compared to those big movements.
Big, yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So that's for the back. I didn't talk much about rowing because I think the pull-ups are just better, to be honest. They have more general use. But obviously, you want to do that for additional thickness. And in a calisthenics context, you can even do inverted rows, which are helpful. And actually, for my contest prep, I was doing inverted cable rows. So you lie down on a bench and you row with 2 D handles or a spreader bar, and that gives you the same benefits as chest supported rowing, but it's just in reverse. So not many guys think about that, but it's an option,
That's very true.
Yeah. And regarding the pressing muscles, like I said before, if you can bench 3 plates, that's going to do a lot for your general mass. And most of my chest development came from just regular flat benching, as well as weighted dips and weighted push-ups. So the 3 most basic movements you can possibly think of, stuff that guys did from day one. Well, I milked that to the extreme level, doing dips with 5 plates, deficit push-ups with 160 to 170, and the deficit especially is amazing because it's a camber bar replacement, but you don't need to buy an additional barbell, and you get a maximum stretch on the pecs. And now we're starting to find out that the pecs do benefit from stretch mediated hypertrophy. So if you find that the barbell bench press is limiting you in the sense that you can't maximize the stretch, or you're just so strong that recovery becomes a problem, then weighted push-ups are a phenomenal option because they're also easier on the shoulder joints compared to dips.
Yeah.
So, and it's going to be more so mid-pec, just a general mass of it, whereas dips are more lower chest emphasized. But some guys can't do it because of shoulder or sternum pain. So I would say get your flat bed strong, get your deficit push-ups up, and you know what? Even the chest crusher, I'm going to throw that one in. I've been doing it for the last year or so, and my God, it's helped me with my mind-muscle connection. Actually, I didn't even realize, but when you do a most muscular, you're supposed to flex your pecs very hard at the same time to show the striations. And I learned how to do that because of the chest crusher.
Exactly.
And you strain hard. It's like maxing out, but you're doing it for reps.
Yeah.
So I like the actually prefer the overhand grip on that one. At first, it's a little bit unstable because it shifts, but once you master the moon pattern, there's nothing that hits your chest like that. Like I don't even do flies anymore. So it's either going to be a press or the old school way.
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of people don't know this. I actually even made a video on it, but Sergio Oliva used to carry around
the
chest crusher
in the restaurant.
he used to just pump them out anywhere. He used to slip it out of his coat and just freaking walk around with the bloody thing. So yeah, I mean, the chest crusher is really an untapped exercise. You don't need a massive pec deck or pec fly machine for it. You can just rep those out and get the same benefit. I agree.
Stick it in the corner of your gym. You learn how to actually feel your chest. Like it's crazy. And like I said, it's similar to maxing out because I used to do a lot of heavy singles, but I found that the chest crusher makes you force even harder. So that's everything pressing related. I can talk about dumbbell benching as well from various angles. That's a giver, but if I'm being just efficient with my advice, that's what I would say. Bench press, way to dip, way to push up. You can't have small pecs doing that. It's not happening.
What about overhead pressing? I mean,
yeah, I'm big on overhead pressing. I think it's most important for Boulder shoulders, and that side delts are amazing, but overrated for most people. Like if you can overhead press 2 plates for reps, you can't have small delts. It's impossible.
Exactly.
And that's why I skip lateral raises on many workouts. I shouldn't be. It would be optimal to mix in both, but I feel like just by having a strong vertical press, you're covered. So for the longest time, I was prescribing just a standing overhead press because that's classical and it's been proven to get results. But in the last year and a half, I've benefited more so from seated overhead pressing. And I don't do it off 100% vertical angle, but rather one stop down. So it's around in 75, 80 degrees, not 60, which would be a high incline, but slightly tilted back. And this gives you a slightly better stretch on your front delts.
You call them AD presses, don't you?
Yeah, I call it the AD press, which stands for anterior delt press and alpha destiny press. But I'm not the inventor of this. It's been around forever. And I think most guys have been doing this unintentionally by just leaning back on the seats. When it's 100% vertical like that, you're going to run into your chin.
Yeah.
It's just odd. Or you're going to have to press the weight out in front of you and then kind of coordinate it back. So you might as well just lean back from the get-go and have the rear stability. Yeah. And you know what? This is what guys are doing on the overhead press to begin with, the standing version. So I figure why not just, sit down in that precise angle, which is the best angle, and that in itself, you can push a bit heavier, not because of any leverage advantages, but due to not having to worry about anything else. It's pure brute force. You don't need to have the best shoulder mobility. You don't have to worry about coordinating forward and backward that much. It's really just straight up and slightly back. You have the back pad support, and if you use a bench that has those little pads at the bottom, like you would do for a decline setup, you can use that to anchor yourself further. So you are locked in on that thing. Your back is not going anywhere. There's no lower back stress. You don't even feel your upper back. It's all delts and triceps, and it hits a tiny amount of upper chest. So you get strong at that, you're covered, and honestly, I just use a straight bar, but dumbbells can also work. And when you're using those dumbbells, I recommend full range of motion, because what people don't understand is that the stronger you get, the bigger they become. So, you'll see guys talking about how you want a 90-degree angle with the arms. So right about here. But the thing is, when you're doing like 80 to 100 pounds or something like that, those dumbbells are so massive that to have that 90-degree angle, you kind of have to have the dumbbells touch your shoulders. Otherwise, you're actually doing quarter reps. So you can't just look at the dumbbell in relation to your ear. You got to look at your anthropometry. So those two. That's what you need for delts. The chest expander for the rear delts, actually, it's the best thing I ever did for that. You know, completely exploded, similar to Fred Roll-On ever since I started using it. And now I'm at 7 springs for reps and the underhand grip. Last time we spoke, I was doing 4 springs.
Yeah, exactly.
So it worked. I'm very grateful for that. And yeah, I do not do reverse pec deck at the gym anymore.
No need.
There's no need. There's no need, and it's worse. It has a crappy resistance profile compared to the chest expander.
Yeah, I mean, it's only at the very extension that you get that contraction, whereas with the expander, you get maximal.
The
whole movement. So
it once you try it, you won't go back. I used to say that the expander was just the old school variation, you know, but I view it as the superior variation. It is it's the best, you know. The whole, I can't even explain it, but that's for rear delts.
In many ways, it reminds me of what Louis Simmons talked about, you know, especially with his rediscovery of band work. I mean,
yes,
you've got the disadvantage, and this goes back to also the writings of Arthur Jones, where you've only got a maximal percentage of the strength curve working with barbells and dumbbells with certain exercises that are not completely vertical, especially those that are circular in motion. Whereas with bands, or in this case, a chest expander, the further you go out, actually, the more resistance you have and the more extreme the contraction becomes. Basically, they're all peak contraction exercises throughout the whole strength curve.
Yeah. And some muscles do benefit from the shortened position, or it can be hard to maximally lengthen them to begin with. So you might as well treat that squeezing part seriously. And it's funny you mentioned Louis, because he mentioned how, I believe it was the 70s, guys had less shoulder injuries from benching. And the major reason for that was the chest expander.
Yeah.
So he was aware of this. And, you know, I think if most guys use it today, there would be less problems, because not only is it about the rear delts, but also the traps. And I can tell you that my entire yoke has improved. And I didn't lose any muscle when I shredded down, you know, and I think it's because that exercise, it's so good, okay, that you can literally just do pull-ups and the chest expander, and your entire, like your whole upper back is going to look crazy.
Yeah, I mean, yours looked crazy, full stop, in the competition, you know. That was the one comment I saw when you were on stage. Most people were saying that back shot just killed everybody's. You had so much detail, so much
appreciate that
muscularity. And
thank you.
It is obvious that what you're saying right now, old school exercises, all the variations of the pull,
all of them, yeah. It's the synergy between them.
Yeah, the hip hinge and finishing off the detail and muscularity upper back with the chest expander. Beautiful.
And I didn't used to have that. You know, I've showed my back double bicep shots for many years now. And I wasn't really known for my rear delts. But after that competition, it was clear that it made a massive difference. Like Natural Hypertrophy said, it looked like a newborn baby coming out of my shoulder. You know, so I credit it 100%. I wish I knew about it sooner, and I'm just going to keep doing it. So that's for the back. Obviously, the chest pressing and the shoulders, we talked about that as well. So I guess it's just the arms and the legs to cover. You know, for the legs, squat and hip hinge. You do those two, most of your mass is covered, easily 80%. Then the rest is just about refining the lower hamstring and the rectus femoris. So a simple workout could just be a plat squat, a good morning, a sissy squat, and a laying leg curl or seated leg curl. That's it. You're done. 4 exercises. You don't even need high volume either. Just go hard and get strong with time, you know. And but I will say this also. If you just had a strong squat, you're still going to have massive legs. Just that some of the details won't be as refined. So it depends how far you want to go. But last year, I actually got my legs up to 27 inches. And one of the movements that did it for me was, which is actually very inefficient, but it did work, was the low bar back squat. You know, it's not as quad biased because there's less knee flexion. You're using a lot of posterior chain. because the way that you're maximizing your leverages and whatnot, right? But the thing is, the weight is so heavy that the absolute load itself is just going to grow you regardless. So if I'm squatting 500 pounds, full range of motion, like proper, below parallel, I mean, I'm not going to have small legs, especially when you built it in a way that wasn't high specificity powerlifting training. If you built to that number with rep work specifically, with variations, I mean, you're good off that. So any squat, I mean, I can say plat squat, I could say SSB squat, I could say something that's more, quad bias, but at the end of the day, just get a strong squat. Pick your favorite, So I'm biased towards back squats because, they've never failed me. But if someone wants to do hack squats, pendulum squats, whatever allows for a little bit more stability, and the goal is quads, well, you want something that gives you the maximum knee flexion. So that tibia's got to be leaning all the way forward, and then the hinging, RDL, good morning. The same advice that applies to spinal erectors is going to do the same for your glutes and hamstrings, at least the meaty portion.
Yeah, absolutely.
And and the lower hamstring, you have to isolate it, because if you don't, it's going to be one of your worst body parts. There are people who can deadlift 700 pounds and right around the knee, they're just, it's flat as a pancake. And it's also important for injury prevention of the knees. So you want, if you can, it's hard to do this, but if you can get your leg curl to be as strong as your leg extension, I mean, you're golden. Your leg's going to look balanced, and you're going to have no discomfort when you're doing any squatting motion. Yeah, most guys, it's the complete opposite. It's very far apart.
Yeah, from what I've read, especially from Louis Simmons' work again, is that you're right. A lot of people don't focus too much on the hamstring, but focusing on it actually protects your knee joint, especially your ligaments.
Yeah,
and, because they obviously run through there. And yeah, I think there's too many people that focus on just squatting, but not enough on hamstring work.
You want to be posterior chain dominant. These are the guys who last the longest and have the best numbers overall. And the hamstrings, Louis used to always recommend high rep banded leg curls.
Yeah.
So you sit down on the bench, attach a band directly to your ankles, and just curl 50 to 100 reps, and do it on a frequent basis. Build those ligaments.
Yeah,
it works.
Absolutely. Arms.
So I mean, for biceps, the main function is elbow flexion. We can talk about supination as well, but it doesn't, any curl will do you just fine. That's the truth. But the best ones are going to be stable and lined up for your build. So I think you're actually right about the preacher curl specifically, because you have maximum arm support, which maximizes motor unit recruitment of the biceps. And when you do them unilaterally, that further adds to maximum force production, and it lines you up. So the thing is, when you're skinny, when you start lifting, you're so narrow that when you do a barbell curl, it's perfectly aligned, such that you won't experience any wrist or elbow discomfort. But as you get bigger and stronger, say curling 100 pounds, you're going to find yourself like this, because your lats are so massive that you end up doing this weird chicken movement. And guys are going to say, oh, it's because you're ego lifting and you got to force a tuck in more. But by you forcing that, you're just fighting your own build.
Yeah.
And this is why bodybuilders will do alternate curls where they're leaning to the side, because even them standing with dumbbells like this, they're still not lined up. They got to, watch Ronnie Coleman do his alternate curls. He's not doing it because he's trying to just lift heavy ass weight. It's because he has no choice. Right? So you can either lean to the side when you have those dumbbells, or you can do something like a preacher curl, where now it completely gets rid of the anthropometry concern. So now, it doesn't matter how big you are, like you're lined up perfectly, right? And if you want more long head of the biceps, you can externally rotate. So do your preacher curls away from you. And if you want more short head, just come in close, but you're still doing the same movement, And then the other benefit of the preacher is that it biases the lengthened position. which is both a pro and a con, in the sense that people say it's more risky for the biceps tendon, but that's also what makes it so hypertrophic, right? And also, as you rightly pointed out, or rather Larry Scott, if you can't wrist curl your preacher curl weight, then you shouldn't be doing it to begin with.
Exactly.
So the flex wrist and going all the way down and maintaining that, I mean, you're good. You're not going to tear a bicep, especially if you're natty, because your tendons and ligaments are adapting at the same rate as your muscles. So the preacher ticks every single box in terms of stability, alignment, resistance profile. That's probably number one, but all of them are good if you're thinking about these particular factors. And, you know, even regular standing dumbbell curls are fine. Whatever's going to be lengthened or mid-range biased is best, you know. Then you can do some squeeze-based stuff like your concentration curls, your spider curls, expander curls, but they're not as important as the bottom to middle portion.
Yeah.
And for triceps, again, a lot of your mass is going to come from getting stronger at the presses, you know, like close grip benching and weighted dips. But if you still struggle beyond that point, which is going to be a lot of people when you're actually strong, then you want to isolate the long head specifically. And the best way to do that is going to be with dual rope pushdowns, or anything that has it's a longer implement, because when you do your traditional V-bar pushdown, your elbows are tucked in front of the body and you're locked in here. So there's no real stretch on the long head, and you're not maximally contracting it. So that's going to be a lot of lateral and medial, which is good for raising your bench, and you're still going to get big arms from it. But essentially, you want to look at pushdowns in a similar light as tricep kickbacks. It's the same thing. So instead of being here, you got two ropes and you're squeezing backwards. And anyone can try this at home right now. When you squeeze here, like, that's what really gets that long head firing. Now, I'm not going to recommend kickbacks because the resistance profile is not good. It's terrible. Like, most of the movement, there's just not much going on there. So that's why people do pushdowns to begin with. So, and it's very easy on the elbows when you do the dual rope. So I always recommend doing those first when you're isolating the tries, and then you want hidden extension immediately after. You know, some guys, they do it the other way around, but I find this is harder on the elbows for nothing. So you might as well get some blood flow, get that synovial fluid action, and then hit your extensions for the lengthened position.
That's a very good idea, and that's a very good point.
Yeah. And for extensions, at this point, I would only, for the most part, I'd recommend dumbbells and cables because you're lined up. So the biceps and the triceps are very similar in the sense that the bicep is elbow flexion and the tricep is elbow extension. But, you know, it's just the same thing in reverse.
Yeah,
if you're not lined up, you're going to have elbow problems.
Yeah.
So I value that. I take that very seriously. And with dumbbells, you're perfect. And you're not going to be so massive that it's going to be a problem, you know, because you're laying down and you got that stretch and you're here. There's nothing, you're not running into your lats, you know, like in a curl. And I like the decline dumbbell extension because it gives you the same benefits as an overhead extension, but now you don't need that overhead mobility and you're a lot more stable and you're not fighting yourself, because the overhead extension, there's a tendency to want to do this, you know, because you're forcing it back, right? And there's also a tendency to like press the weight up. So when you have the elbows this way instead and you're laying down on a bench, but like it's as if you're going to fall off, it just makes it easy to stay there, you know? So
yeah, that's another good point, I think. I've noticed though that you never talk much about calf training, and if I have to critique one body part, and you know, not trying to critique, but is that something you avoid training, or
I didn't train them at all.
Yeah, okay.
Out of every muscle in my body, it's the muscle that I have the least amount of experience with. They're basically novice level, honestly. I'm equivalent to most gym bros who don't train them. However, it's been about a month and a half now where I'm actually going balls to the wall and I want to blow them up. Yeah, cool. And the way I'm doing that is with donkey calf raises. There's actually a machine at the gym. I'm going to max that out. and the seated calf raise. So just those two. I'm not even bothering with standing because it's similar to the donkey, but I feel the donkey gives you an even better stretch. So
It does. And the problem with standing is that it compresses your spine. And if you're already doing
yeah,
quite a lot of squatting, you're doing, a lot of pressing, you're already going to get so much spinal decompression. And from what I understand, some donkey calf raises can actually, if they're belt based machines, like some in the past, they actually contraction your spine. So
true. Well, at the gym, I use the regular one, but at home, I actually have a calf raise block, and I will do them in my belt squat machine. So it's exactly what you said: traction and building your calves simultaneously.
Wonderful, wonderful.
But technically, you don't need a belt squat machine for that,
No,
because if you just loop a chain through some plates,
bingo.
it's not going to hit the block when you're stretched out on the bottom. And this is actually how Mr. America Hart does his calf raises.
Yeah.
He'll load up like 400 pounds, and then he'll have his son jump on his back. So I think it's like a total of 600 pounds. And that's another thing. The calves are very strong muscles. So if you think like, I just started training them, and I'm already hitting about 300 pounds on the donkey calf raise. But that's not impressive. Not at all, So if you're not maxing out the machine on that, you got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I agree. For your own information, you may already know this, but from what I understand, especially with calf raising, the standing calf raise, that is, which targets the gastrocnemius, you can. I know that a lot of people can go way higher, but from studies, some studies suggest that you can safely use 2 to 3 times your own body weight. However, what's unknown until recently is that the soleus, the muscle itself, can withstand 8 times your body weight. And that I never knew. And that is ridiculous. I mean, can you imagine blowing out? I mean, they are the bigger muscle because they run all the way from your knee down to your heel. As in, you've got this large diamond shaped muscle that just runs the whole way. And the gastrocnemius are essentially you got 2 heads that kind of end up, depending on your genetics and attachment, either very high or kind of in the middle, which gives you a much larger calf, of course. But the soleus will always be the larger of the 2. And for anyone with small calves, especially, I should say, small gastrocnemius, you can compensate by growing your soleus much, much more. And you can, because you can seriously load the soleus.
Wow. It's wonderful to hear, because I was quite lazy with my seated calf raiser for some time. Yeah. But now that I know that the soleus has that 8 times more strength potential, that's
essentially 2 to 3 times more than what you would be using in the donkey or standing calf raise. That's just
so it's a good compensation strategy.
Exactly.
Wow. I mean, that's a golden tidbit right there.
Yeah, there's some real old school photos of Reg Park doing seated calf raises, and he has the seated calf raise loaded to about freaking 1 meter high. I just can't even count the plates. It's just ridiculous.
Wow.
That's how much weight you can use. Yeah.
Wow. I had no idea that, I thought it was the weakest part,
No,
but okay, I'm gonna double those lows. Let's go.
Well, you take it easy, but this is according to some scientific studies.
Yeah. Well, even the traps are very strong muscle, to the point where you can rack pull 1,000 pounds and not tear them, as a natural. So when a muscle has very high potential and strength, and you're not pushing it to that, well, usually I see lagging development, so because you're capable of so much more.
Yeah. On calf raising as well, one thing that John Park was telling me was that, yes, the calves are ridiculously strong because basically they carry our own body weight each. However, their weakest point will always be in the stretched position. And so if you are planning on going very, very heavy, for example, Reg Park recommended doing pumps from basically floor position, not a pre-stretch.
Interesting.
just to not overstretch the Achilles. I mean, the Achilles is strong,
Oh,
but yeah,
okay.
these are some tips that I got from John.
Yeah, I would have thought that was the opposite in terms of hypertrophy, because the calves benefit from the stretch, right? And
Yes,
because the Achilles is so powerful, it stores a lot of elastic energy. But if you're talking about moving heavy weights, then I guess it's a different.
it gets to a certain point. I mean, I asked him specifically, there's the story of Arnold training with Rich Park and using 1,000 pounds. How did he do it? And he said, well, it's true, he did, but they didn't do full range motions. They were pump motions. And so they would kind of get up to 4, 5, maybe 600 pounds and as they got higher and higher, the movement got shorter and shorter. And in doing
Gotcha.
so, they would also strengthen the ligaments and the joints in the area and the tendons, which allow them to obviously keep pounding on the weight. And this was a gradual process.
Gotcha.
It's quite interesting, actually. Yeah.
Okay. Well, something to think about.
Yeah. All right. Continuing. So you've trained how many years in total before finally entering this competition?
It's about 13 years.
Yeah.
Including the calisthenics, because that was my base. So yeah, I didn't do this after I put my money where my mouth is.
Yeah.
I didn't do this after 3 to 5 years. I waited over 10 to finally pull this off. And that's why I looked like that. Even though I was a first-time competitor, this was years in the making.
Yeah. You just said it. I mean, this is something I think that should be drilled in the heads of natural lifters that want to compete. I mean, this should be repeated again and again and again. Everyone out there, if you didn't hear that, Alex competed after 13 years of training. Just understand.
Yeah. I had some guys in person tell me, "What? You've never competed?" They were shocked. I'm like, "Yeah, first time. Let's go." But you can't be rushing this process. If you're not ready, then don't do it. You're just wasting your time. Like you might do well, you might get top 5, but don't you want to like win it or get close, top 3 at least?
Yeah.
So and the one who's gonna have the most muscle is gonna beat you.
Bingo.
That's what it is.
You said it, man.
Especially in classic physique, because you can have bodybuilders from different weight classes and the same as you, because it's based off height. So you can. So like if you're a classic A, for example, the heights vary between, well, as short as possible all the way to around 5'7" or 5'8". So you could have a guy who's 5'8" against a 5'2" guy with a lot more muscle, and he comes in more shredded, you're done.
Yeah.
So you better focus on having that size, because it's the people on the extreme ends that are going to make you work.
Yeah, I agree. Or you could have it the other way around too. I mean, I don't know if this is true, but there's the rumor that shorter guys, because of their stature, seem to appear to have more muscle. Now, if you're a guy 5'10" or whatever, and an equal weight, then you're going to look like nothing next to them. So
yeah, but in classic physique, that guy wouldn't be allowed to compete with the shorter person. So that this is where, and then also you got to look at like the major, like overall titles as well. For example, in the enhanced world, you got Chris Bumstead, and then there's Terrence Ruffin, right? Terrence is like 5'5", and Chris is a lot taller. So because of that, he can have more muscle, and that just, it's hard for Terrence to beat him, So at some point, you just have too much mass that, regardless of your proportions, then you just, you won't be able to stand a chance. Like if you put me up against a heavyweight, like my proportions might be better, but assuming we're both single-digit body fat, he's probably going to beat me in overall competition. But I think being shorter is generally an advantage, especially if you're not going to, we're talking about the world level, the highest level possible. But if you're an average natural bodybuilder and you're below average height, you definitely look more impressive. You're more compressed. It's like taking a picture of yourself in Microsoft Paint and then just stretching it down. That's what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. I noticed that when I was, preparing for this interview, I wanted to look at that decision you finally made to compete. And I noticed that it was at the end of last year that you announced your cut, right? But then
Yeah.
suddenly, if I'm not mistaken, if my memory serves me well, it was the start of the new year that you announced that you were competing, right? So
Yes.
when did you actually decide that you were ready for competition? Was it late last year, or was it just your New Year's resolution? How did that work?
Well, it actually happened because the year before I had gotten shredded and just for social media purposes.
Mhm.
And I was looking at my physique, thinking to myself, God damn, Alex, why did you not compete in bodybuilding? I mean, I did all the suffering. I got to the level that was required, yet, you know, it was just for a couple little videos. And I regretted it.
Mm.
I regretted not competing because I looked so good. And I thought to myself, well, if I do another bulk, you know, gain another 5 pounds of muscle, which is exactly what I did. And then I cut down again. I do it better than last time because you make a lot of mistakes the first time, right? Then surely I can be heavier, come in more conditioned, just have a better physique overall. And 2022, that whole bulking time was all about bodybuilding, all about just pure hypertrophy training. So I did things right. I really worked on my weaknesses,
Mhm.
improved a lot. And by the time that bulk was done, I was so strong and massive, you can say, that I was like, yeah, when I cut down, I'm going to look crazy. So again, I'm fantasizing the way I looked last year and how much better can I look this time around.
Mm.
So you're cutting, you notice that you had a heavier body weight, that you look leaner than last time. And it just, the deeper you go into it, eventually becomes clear, like, yeah, you got to compete.
Yeah.
You can't just do this for social media again. So I think I was around 165 pounds or so, where I was like, yeah, I have to.
That's
And
good.
just the tick was there, you know, and I was watching all these natural bodybuilders I was inspired by. I mean, I kept thinking about bodybuilding. It was consuming my brain, you know, and sometimes you need a goal that is greater than yourself, you
Mm.
know, and competition really brings out the best of you.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then, you know what, rite of passage, right? To say that I'm not just a recreational lifter anymore. Like I'm a bodybuilder.
Yeah.
It's different. So, and I want to prove to myself that I could do it without a coach, that my knowledge was sufficient, that my training worked, that I could bring a package. And, you know, it's just one win stacked up on another. So it was just about time.
Very good, man. Very good. So, we've been talking about your what was it? Your preparation, and your cut was then how long exactly?
Like 6 to 7 months. I say that because I also had a 1 month diet break.
Huh. I didn't.
Yeah. Yeah, right in the middle of it. When I got down to 165, I maintained that for a month. And then because I knew that past that point is when the cut would get difficult. So to be psychologically refreshed, it makes a massive difference. I cannot recommend it enough.
Wow. So, did you actually have cheat days or just
Oh yeah, I even went on vacation. I enjoyed myself.
okay,
Yeah,
but still maintained your body fat level to a certain?
yeah, yeah. Wasn't a problem. Obviously, a bit of water weight. At most, I maybe gained a pound or two of fat, but not even think that happened.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you just didn't go all out, obviously.
No, no, like still eating healthy, just a little bit more loose.
Yeah.
Mostly just maintenance, rather than being in a deficit. Some days you're in a surplus, sometimes you're maintenance, sometimes you're a deficit. But I wasn't really focused about my weight. Just let it flow. As long as I didn't pig out, then I knew it was gonna be fine.
You see, this is something I remember. I think I was either speaking or reading something about Dave Draper. So may he rest in peace. Um, but he mentioned once that um, he met a teenager who told him he wanted to get shredded for competition, and Dave assumed that it was 6 months, a year in advance. The guy wanted to get ripped I think it was either a month or 3 months.
Mm.
And Dave said and looked at him up and down and said, "Why don't you just start cutting and prepare for next year's competition?"
Oh wow.
So yeah, I mean, My question there is then, do you think it takes this long to do a proper cut?
It does. And actually, I read Dr. Lane Norton's book on competition prep, and he said that most people who do a 12-month prep, they're making a mistake. It's too short, and that's assuming they're not absurdly fat.
Mhm.
So you can be decently lean, and 3 months is you're rushing the process. You're
Yeah.
really playing with fire there.
Mhm.
So I think for most people, it's going to take at least 4 to 5 months of proper cutting.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, one great example of a natural bodybuilder that tried that's quite famous is Nick from Nick Strength and Power. I mean, you see how, ridiculous he looked on stage. And now speaking of, again, extended period of time and cutting, one of the best examples from the old school was Vince Gironda, who recommended 9 months
Wow.
in his definition program. Yeah.
Well, it makes sense because the thing is, you can't be losing weight quickly when you're that shredded, or else you will lose muscle fast.
Yeah.
And your strength is gonna. So the way it works is when you're quite fluffy, let's say bear mode, you can drop a lot of weight relatively quickly and not experience many negatives. But the leaner you get, first of all, your total daily energy expenditure is a lot less. So you can't lose as much weight. And every pound of body fat that you drop is visually apparent. You can spot the difference. So when I look at my physique, I see a difference between 153 and 152. And then just 150. So 2 pounds apart, it's like drastic because now you're taking off that last amount that's, in your stubborn spot or whatever. So if you're trying to rush that last process, I'm going to do 2 pounds a week when you're already single digit or close to it, you're going to be losing muscle guaranteed. And it's so precise, in fact, that even in my case, I did lose muscle in the last 2 weeks. I feel like I look better a little bit before that point because your body's sensitive. And, when you're bulking, you experience double progression. So like plus ones, improvement every single workout. When you're cutting, it's like minus ones, right? And then if you try to rush the end process where you're revealing the final details, it's going to be more than minus ones. It might be -2, -3.
Exactly.
And you'd be shocked at how fast it happens. By the end, you might not be able to complete your workout. And that's another thing. If you can't like maintain the stimulus, that in itself is going to lead to muscle loss. So because the final shred requires you to take your time, by default, you're going to need more than 3 months.
Yeah.
Unless you're already very close to that body fat, which is not the case for most people who bulk properly the natural way.
I mean, now you're talking about really important factors in getting cut, which is time. Do you think there are other also important factors that you want to talk about to be crisp? I mean, you looked really like the most cut on stage. I mean, your back,
Thank you.
It was freaking ridiculous. What factors other than time do you think are important?
Muscle mass will help distribute the fat through a larger surface area. But at the end of the day, it really is just time. Those guys that were next to me, if they would have dieted a couple more weeks, they would have been equivalent conditioning to myself. And even me, I could have been Nunez level if I would have dieted for an additional month. Because I had a little bit of glute striations, but not all the way, right? So that's, people don't want to hear that. They try to manipulate their peak week by drinking all this water and taking diuretics and doing all these things. But at the end of the day, a couple more weeks when you're actually shredded is what gives you that crisp look. And for me, besides that, I guess the only thing I could say is reducing the carbs. Like you get very good at monitoring how much you can tolerate. So by the end, I was getting like maximum 100 grams a day. Usually it was like 80. And then you start to slowly ramp it up towards the end of the competition to fill in the muscles, but you don't want to take in so many that you spill over because then you take on a watery look. So for that, it's called the front loading strategy. And that's what Lane Norton recommended in his book. So, at the start of the week, you're gradually introducing more carbohydrates, you know, and then towards the end, you can taper back or include a bit more if you're not quite as full. But if you overdo it in one shot, like the backload, I think, is like 2 days before, you just stuff your face, right? You can still be shredded, but now if you're holding on to water weight, you're not going to look crisp. So it's the combination of the water weight and actually being a proper single digit.
Yep, now I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I don't know the names or the terms, but I know the process. On that note, so you're talking about going down to as low as 80 grams until you're talking about a fortnight before. Is that right?
Of what?
A fortnight before peak.
A fourth night before peak?
A fortnight. So 2 weeks before you were on 80 grams.
Oh, that was like the last 3 to 4 weeks, you could say.
Okay. And then
yeah.
And then how many weeks out do you start carving up slowly?
The last week only.
Yeah, that's what I figured. That's what I meant.
Yeah. So and I think that's why I didn't feel so good towards the end, because you're really trying to deplete. And the thing is, you also want to test how many carbs you can tolerate before spilling over. And that's actually a tip I learned from a natural bodybuilder. You know, we talked privately about this. He said every week, the reason why you want to do the refeed with carbs is not so that you feel better necessarily, that you can push yourself next week or even have a psychological break. No, it's just to test how much carbs you can tolerate before you start to look a bit watery, because you will see it. You can see the difference. 50 grams of carbs can actually break you. That's how sensitive you are. So, yeah, I would do like 250 grams for my refeeds. And I realized that was my sweet spot.
Wow.
And then when you, on the peak week, you do 250 to 300 carbs a day. You, you just stay in that zone. Some days a bit less. And that's it. So you're going up and down in carbs throughout the week, but you don't exceed that amount. You never go above 300 grams, at least as it pertains to myself, you know?
Very interesting. Now, next question I wanted to ask was, we've talked a lot about diet and timing. What about the exercises, the choice of exercise and style of training? Did that change much between your bulking and cutting?
Big time. So when you're shredding down, you really, first of all, you can't tolerate high volume. It's basically impossible. So I was doing a maximum of 2 sets per exercise. And funny enough, I still train like that today because I prefer it. And actually, see the difference is when you're cutting, you don't have a choice. But when you're bulking, now you're giving your all for those 2 sets. So you can actually make it quite efficient. So I think it's a blessing that I figured this out. But yeah, less volume and then less axial loading to the point where in the end stages, I was no longer able to barbell back squat. I felt like I was going to rip a disc out. Like my spine was going to come flying out of my torso or something. Like, and this is, you know, I have strong spinal erectors, you know, and I use good form and everything. But I remember one workout, I unloaded 3 plates. I was on my 5th rep or so, and I just felt my lower back like popping and screaming in pain. I was like, no, I got to stop right then and there. So I just switched to belt squats and all was good. There was no injuries, but I can tell that if I were going to do this for a couple more weeks, I was going to end up snapping up my lower back, you know, and then my right knee started getting sensitive. So I noticed every time I get down to single digit, my joints start hurting. So yeah, because there's no fat around the joints, right? And your recovery is garbage.
Connective tissue. I mean, fat, as a lot of people probably don't understand, it's not necessarily, you know, at a certain natural, healthy state, acts as connective tissue. It's not just unsightly, and improves your leverages. Therefore, you can, you know, when you're in bear mode, you can do some serious damage in the gym. You know,
being shredded teaches you about fatigue management, and it makes you wonder, like, maybe when I'm bear mode, there's certain things that I shouldn't be doing, because if I'm this sensitive at single digit, what if I were to like train the same way, but now with a higher level of intensity with the extra body fat? Wouldn't I now recover like Superman?
Sure.
And that's essentially what I've been experiencing. So axial loading and then muscle blending. The way, for example, when someone runs a bro split, or not a bro split, but any split where like you're doing the isolation work, maybe that isolation can affect your compounds for the upcoming sessions that has nothing to do with that muscle per se. Or like, okay, let me simplify this. If you did a back workout on Tuesday, and then you're going to do legs on Wednesday, when you're shredded, that's a big problem, because when you load up that bar on your back, your upper back is still demolished, and it's in a constant state of under recovery. So you're going to find that little overlap makes you weaker, makes you more drained, and it makes you more it increases the chances of getting injured. So that's what I found. Like you really got to learn how to split things up. Like I could not do bent over rowing the day before back day, the day before leg day, impossible. So all my stuff was, like I did inverted rows exclusively. I didn't do any other row. The one I was telling you about before, where you're lying down your back, that's all I did. I did pull-ups. I did, I call them ghetto lat pull downs, where the legs are up on the floor. So I did, those are my 3 back movements for the entire contest prep. That's it. Yeah, anything that like really focuses on the way to stretch or loads your spine or allows for big weights to be moved, like your overloading exercises, stay away from that. You're going to find yourself gravitating more towards the mid and shortened movements. And that's also what I liked about the Chest Krusher and Expander, in the sense that it's more so the end ranges where you're forcing like crazy, but that in itself doesn't tax the recovery quite the same way as that stretched out portion. So you're kind of, what's optimal for gaining muscle, you're not like movement pattern wise and strength curve wise, you're not favoring that all the way when you're trying to be single digit.
Yeah, of course. I mean, these compound movements are not just going to fatigue your joints and everything else, but your central nervous system. And under a state of starvation, essentially, you're starving yourself.
You don't fatigue adds up, that's for sure.
Yeah, you don't want to then, on top of that, overload your central nervous system.
Yeah, because the thing is, your ability to push hard is so limited that if you're doing a big movement where you're giving it your all, and your all is already so little, then what are you gonna do for the rest of the session? Exactly. You're totally spent. Trust me on that. Like my last 2 weeks, I couldn't complete my leg workouts in full. I had to drop some stuff, which was embarrassing, but that's what it was. Even walking was difficult. So imagine if you have trouble walking and you're going to go do some big movement where you can hit some crazy weights, like your workout's going to suck.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've talked about now the exercises and your strategies there. But what about cardio? Did you actually do any cardio at all?
Honestly, not that much. I would say cardio was the least important part of my journey.
Yeah.
I did some burpee routines for a little bit, maybe for 2 months or something. But the rest was just diet. You perfect that. And the problem is, okay, it's easy to say, just do all this cardio, because then you can eat more food. The issue is you don't have the energy to do it. You don't. And if you do, it's going to be half-assed cardio. And if anything, it's going to make you more tired, which is going to lower your NEAT and ends up balancing out.
Yeah.
So if I have to walk twice a day for 60 minutes, which might not sound like walking, come on, that's easy. No, it's very, very difficult when you're at that level of leanness. Even walking 20 minutes will leave you spent. So telling me, like, I'd rather bench press than walk, So that's why I didn't do much cardio. I would have loved to do more. I just didn't have the energy. So diet is what had to be perfect, and it was. Everything was weighed.
Well done, man. I mean, yeah, just listening to all this is amazing. I can just imagine how reduced your work capacity is. And as you said, like, I mean, maybe cardio in the very beginning, but I can understand why, especially in the old school, a lot of people didn't even do cardio, because as long as
you don't need it.
Yeah, you don't need it. Exactly.
I can, and it teaches you how to really perfect your nutrition. Once you can get single digit without cardio, there's no excuses. You won. So I can do it again. And yeah, I would repeat the same strategy.
Right.
I would do, I mean, cardio is good for your health, but in terms of being shredded for bodybuilding, these guys aren't jogging. They're, you know, they're not cycling. They're not doing marathon burpee workouts. It's because of the macros. That's the macros, the caloric needs. That's what it is.
When did you really start, would you say, feeling depleted? How many weeks out was that?
I would say around 8 weeks out.
Whoa, that's amazing.
Yeah, because the thing is, I screwed up because I was shredded 6 weeks out. So I mean, a bit heavier, obviously, but
yeah, I noticed. I mean,
yeah,
one of the things I noticed about, I think it was around March or April, was how huge your freaking delts were. I mean, they were just ginormous. Your arms were thick and just relaxed. You just had freaking veins everywhere. And
yeah, I had veins in my my lower abs, my delts. I didn't even have to flex.
Yeah.
So it was a very different look. And I think that's why I felt so crappy in the end, because I prolonged this state of suffering. So, and I think the last 2 weeks, there was really, it was suffering for nothing, you know? So I think this cut could have been done in less than that 6 or 7 month time frame. Maybe 5 would have been better for me, you know? So, but I would say, you know, when I got to the 150s in body weight is when things got very difficult, you know, like just being silver era lean. And I had shown a picture of me, where I kind of looked like John Grimmick, right? That kind of body fat, I felt fine. But when the shreds come in, you got veins everywhere. That's it's downhill from there. But I would say the last 2 weeks out, I felt like I was going to die. Yeah. That was the worst ever. Like the peak week was actually wonderful because you're carbing up and you're feeling better day by day. But before that, like when you're really depleted, it's
I can see it getting uncomfortable now.
And people are worried for you when they see you. But yeah, I would say 2 weeks out was the worst part of this entire journey. Definitely.
Did you consider throwing in the towel?
Nope, that was never going to happen. If I had to end up at the hospital, I was still going to show up at my bodybuilding comp.
That's the way, man. How did you keep that motivation up?
Don't need motivation. Well, first of all, I announced to my audience that I was going to do it.
Yeah.
And when I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. That's it. Even if I bring a shitty package, as long as I gave my best, it's what it is. So, you know, and I went that far. I suffered for already 6 months. What's another month?
Yeah.
I'll do it.
Absolutely.
You can't quit towards the end when the finish line's right there.
Yeah. I had to ask. Tanning. Did you suntan at all?
No, I only did the spray tan, but also you have to exfoliate your body in advance. The last 2 weeks, you're rubbing yourself with these like these shea butter, what's it called? Pomegranate seed things, and you're supposed to get rid of all the dead skins so the tan sticks to you better. So it's all artificial now. And let me tell you, that experience was a nightmare because I'm very pale, so they had to do like multiple coats, and that room is freezing. So you're in there naked. There's fans blowing on you. They're like ice cold, and you're just being sprayed this and you're in there for like a while.
With no body fat to protect you.
With no, you are freezing balls. Like I've never been that cold before.
Damn. And you live in
Canada. I'm in Canada, so cold weather. You're in a cold room, cold fan, cold spray. Like by the end, you're shivering. You know, and everyone complained about the same thing. If you go grocery shopping, I remember there was a nice day. It was sunny as well. I was freezing in the grocery store. And there was no AC, you know, so
yeah,
you find yourself turning on your heaters when it's not necessary. You find yourself wearing long sleeve, like fleece t-shirts and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, you're such a low digit body fat percentage that your body can't even generate heat anymore.
No, it's real. You don't sweat either. I didn't sweat for like a month.
You wouldn't need to. Sweating is a natural body response to keeping you cool, but you are too
Yeah.
hot. So yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
surprised you're shivering. Do you think that sun tanning would have helped?
No,
Not at
wouldn't
all.
have done anything.
Okay.
Because you can go from white to black with that spray tan. It's gone so advanced now that yeah, you don't need it.
Okay.
Otherwise, I would have done it, but everyone said it. There's no point. So
All right. Post comp, last couple of questions. Did you find that after the comp, you know, eating normally now, that you got stronger than before? And the reason I ask this is because from what I've spoken to other people and what I've read, your body being under starvation mode hence to overcompensate. Now there is a moment where this happens, just like in the week before peak week, where everybody knows that your body overcompensates. But even after that, did you find that your muscles loaded faster than ever, which translated to a very fast rate of hypertrophy and strength gains?
yes, but I don't know if it's because of muscle memory or not. Like what I'll say is after 3 days, I was up 13 pounds and my muscles looked really full.
Wow. 13
Yeah.
pounds.
13 pounds in 3 days. Now,
Is
how
this
much of that is
after your competition?
after the competition? 3 days after.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
And but the thing is you still look shredded, but now the muscles are popping. So you still got the veins, but you just have this full look. And that full look lasts for about 2 weeks before the fluff starts to come back on. And what I mostly noticed was an explosion in appetite, an appetite that I never had in my life. You're hungry. It's crazy because, I mean, I'm going to tell you right now, I put on over 30 pounds since that competition. That's only been like 2.5 months ago. So your appetite is ravenous, like your belly is exploding, right? Like it hurts. You have stomach pain, and you still feel hunger in your throat. So the moment that dissipates just a tiny amount, you're eating again. So you're in a constant state of binging. You want to say something?
yeah, I'm just thinking. I mean, I can imagine that your stomach would have shrunk, and that's what
Yeah.
you feel like it's exploding, but
Yeah.
probably starting to stretch it again to its original size.
Yes. It takes about 3 weeks before that pain goes away. Because also your microbiome is completely ruined. Because by the end of your death cut, your foods are so specific that you basically killed off all your good bacteria. So now you got to get used to eating normally again. So there's the fact that your stomach shrank, you can't handle what you normally eat, and you're still hungry, but you're actually bloated at the same time. So it's very odd, but once you get over that hurdle, yeah, the strength gains come back exceptionally fast, and to the point where, I mean, I'm basically where I was before I left off. Like my arms are 17 inches again,
Nice.
which I'm very happy about, and I'm lighter than I was at the peak of my bulk. So you can say this is the biggest I've ever been at this body weight. I did a 315 for 10 bench press.
Sure.
So I can probably bench 405 today if I want. I did a 100 kilo for 5 seat overhead press. I wasn't even doing that when I was bulked last year. So all of my strength from when I was 200 pounds has returned to me at a lighter body weight, and in 2 months' time, after being single digit death mode shredded.
Yeah.
So if that's not insanely fast progress, then I don't know what is. So
that's exactly the point about overcompensating.
It's insane. But the thing is, I already had this strength, but it just came back like absurdly fast. And I've done cuts before, but it never at this rate did I explode. And the thing is, in some muscles, I've actually surpassed my strength. Like the good mornings, the best I ever did was 275 for 10 reps. Well, last week I did 275 for 12, and then this week I did 285 for 10.
Nice.
And so I'm experienced like novice level progression again on some movements, but there's some stuff that actually did not return, like my biceps. I still can't match what I was doing before the cut, but everything else has returned.
That might return later because I think the way the nervous system works, obviously nervous system to muscle, is that your axial strength comes before what's it called? Your appendicular laterally. Just the way the nervous system works. So I reckon
That makes sense.
you're overcompensating right now towards your center, and then
Yeah.
it's gonna transfer later over that way. So I
Yeah,
wouldn't
I could see that. I could see that happening because even with the arm measurements, like the centimeters have been like going up over the last couple weeks, you
Yeah.
know, like they weren't 17 last week. So it's
It'll come.
fast.
It'll come,
Yeah.
I reckon, within a month.
Awesome.
What's your plan now for the year?
Continue where I left off. You know, I the only reason why I cut was to compete in bodybuilding, you know. So now I'm just gonna focus on putting on more muscle. Let's say another 5 pounds of lean mass, however long that takes. It could be 6 months, it could be a year. I have no idea, but I'm just gonna push it to the limit, probably go above 200 pounds in weight, get fatter than last time, you know, maximize my absolute strength. And I'm very much enjoying, like I was telling you before about the high intensity training. I'm doing that in the bulk now. And it's the first time I've ever done this. So I'm very, very curious to see what that's going to do to my progression.
Yeah.
So I'm going to milk that.
2 points I want to remember. That's why I'm just putting fingers up. Do you plan to compete again then in the future?
Maybe as a birthday special, because what's funny is that the Mike Clement Classic, it was 4 days after my birthday. So that means every time I choose to do this precise competition, well, I don't get to celebrate, right?
Yeah.
But if I hit a certain milestone age, then that would be a nice way to celebrate, if you ask me.
Cool.
Right. So that's what I would do. It would maybe be in 2 or 3 years from now if I choose to compete again. Or I would go with the WNBF, but I think they're on a different level. So I need to put on more mass in certain areas like the hamstrings, the calves, you know, just refine a bit more, you know?
Yeah, well, I think you just said it. Working on some areas that you haven't worked on, the calves will definitely increase your mass. You've got places to grow, essentially.
They're basically untrained, you know? And then if you compete again, you gotta, you know, refine the posing, get a better routine going on, and know who your competition is. You know, if you're competing at the world level, then you got to produce a world class physique. You know, you can't just be showing up to local shows necessarily. So I don't know what the future holds, but right now it's got to be about weak point correction. Like me trying to, like, I got my 3 plate for 10 bench again. Me trying to get that to 15 reps, like I could, but what's the point? Like, my chest is not what needs addressing right now. Maybe my shoulders are good, but why not get them bigger, right? That becomes very important when you're trying to have that natural bodybuilder X-frame physique, right? So quads, like it's like you said, just double down on what you suck at, quote unquote.
Absolutely. And it's interesting as a final note. I didn't say it, but you just said it. That during the shred, you basically were doing high intensity training.
Yeah.
And now you've kind of rediscovered it. In my own opinion, high intensity training is for the elite, for those that have had years of training, because to quote John Ballack, I think it was, who once walked into gym in late 1970s and Bill Pearl, sorry, my bad. Walks into the gym early 1980s and sees the Mensa's training. And he says, it wasn't the weight that impressed me when the Mensas were preacher curling. It was at the extended position, the thickness of the ligaments and tendons that were like, they were the size of thumbs, not even fingers, just thickness of thumbs. And that's how he realized the intensity of high intensity training and the kind of structure that you need to be able to do that kind of workout. Now you're pretty, you know, many would call you an elite natural lifter now, especially because of your strength levels, your experience. I mean, that's what I would call you, you know. Seeing you do 8, 9, 10, I don't know how many one-arm shifts, for example. Like I compared you to Marvin Eder, who
had I'm
that
honored, man.
He had that kind of level strength, right? Which you now possess. And you naturally realizing that now you can make the most of high intensity training. Is that what you're going to now do? Because in my own opinion, it is a very smart move.
You said it perfectly. And the reason, this is where I'm at. I would have never considered training this way in the past, but now I notice I don't recover like I used to. I don't. And I've tried to be as evidence-based as possible. I learn from everybody. All I care about is the truth. I'm not biased. But I've been led down this path because the numbers I lift absolutely destroy me. And even the frequency, I find myself, I used to train every 72 hours. Now it's around every 96 at a minimum. So the workouts, they take more out of me. I'm able to push to a higher level. I was always able to grind, but now I can really grind. I can have a 10-second rep, like, so my proximity to failure is more accurate. The absolute loads, exercise selection, everything is so precise at this point that I know that this is what I need. And you know what? I'd rather do this than ultra high volume with reps in reserve. I mean, sure, I can continue to train that way. It's built most of the best physiques so far, and I have nothing bad to say about it per se, but I'd rather go the efficient, guaranteed route, which is essentially no junk volume. And it's, every set is maximally hypertrophic and everything is like, there's no room for error. You got one shot and that's it.
Well, absolutely. I mean, there's a place for all of this. I've discussed this with Prometheus, for example. Prometheus Project. I don't know if you know him, from Germany, natural bodybuilder, beautiful physique. And just like you, he started off with high volume training, doing very heavy workouts, but eventually there's several things that happen. You become a master of your craft. Your neuromuscular connection at this point, after over a decade of training, is way more precise than a novice. Your actual pathways in the way you're pushing the actual exercise tends to hit the muscle way more efficiently than anybody else would, right? At the same time, you are pushing weights that are going to fry your central nervous system. And so, as you said, at this point, quality takes over quantity. And it makes sense. It makes perfect sense.
And guys don't understand because they haven't hit this level.
Bingo.
Like a novice benching 135 for 10 cannot compare their set to mine.
No.
Even though it's the same proximity to failure, I'm doing almost 3 times the load, and I'm not a heavy guy, right? So this is like, imagine doing double bodyweight benching for reps. Like, it destroys you. It kills you. And the axial loaded motions, that's why I don't deadlift anymore as well. I can still do them, but that's why I favor good mornings, because I don't want to have to do 600 pounds and feel fried for the rest of the workout or the rest of the week. So it's a real thing. And you got to listen to your body. And, I would have loved to do more frequency and train kind of similar to how I used to. I even tried it, I can't recover. I need those off days. I need more time in between strenuous sessions. I have to.
Hey man, but you almost seemed sad about it, but I think,
because I love training and
but you're evolving. I mean, that's how
I know it's a different form. It's your needs change. You have to adapt, and not what worked for you at one point might not work for you now. I guess the only downside of this is being a content creator. You want to film as much footage of you training as possible. But if you have to lower that because you're prioritizing yourself and your own recovery, well, that's less for the viewers to experience. But at the end of the day, I got to be a little bit selfish because my gains matter. And, I don't want to get injured either, which is very important. If you're out of this game, then what's the point of doing more just to please people who, are going to leave you when you're hurt. So I'm enjoying this. I like the high intensity training. I like training to failure. I like seeing what I'm capable of. And also, when you said becoming a master of your craft, it's also mastering the movement patterns of certain big compounds, right? Like because I'm so barbell focused. Like there's a skill component to that, you know, and I've been benching for so many years now that my movement pattern is refined. So now it's not just because I'm misgrooving a rep and therefore that's failure, quote unquote. It's more so like every rep was perfect and the last one is my final effort. And that's why I can grind for 10 seconds, because you got the perfect leverages. And now you're just, you know, you're pushing until there's nothing left.
Maximizing, absolutely. All right, man. That's my questions.
Well, those were some excellent questions. You got me expanding on a lot.
Yeah. I think we're gonna have to leave the next part, which is what I really want to start talking about. And I think not enough is talked about this, and that's the conjugate method in bodybuilding. So I think we're gonna have to reschedule.
That's a whole episode right there.
Exactly.
I got a lot to say about conjugate because that's how I built the majority of the strength.
Yeah, I think it's important that we talk about this. But yeah, mate, it's been an absolute pleasure as always. And
Carlos, it's been wonderful. Thank you so much for having me on.
Well, thank you for your patience in answering everything, man. And yeah, I'll upload this soon, and hopefully we can talk again.
Looking forward to it, and absolutely.
Head to www.goldenerabookworm.com for the biggest range of classic old school bodybuilding books as ebooks, e-magazines such as Iron Man and Reg Park Journal, high quality bodybuilding posters of the golden era stars, merchandise and classic gymwear featuring Steve Reeves, Marvin Eder, John Grimmick, Reg Park, and many other golden era stars. For those wishing to build a classic physique, lose fat and build muscle, online training is also available. Collectibles such as rare autographed photos from the golden era stars are also available, and to collaborate, please get in touch. As a natural bodybuilder, it is imperative to know your own testosterone levels, as they are a reflection of the anabolic environment created by your diet and training. I would highly recommend using the male hormone test kit from Let's Get Checked, and make sure you use my code GOLDEN30 for a 30% discount. Again, the advantage of checking yourself regularly is that you will know how well your body is anabolically primed to put on the much desired muscle you are working for. Not all of us have the time to go to a gym or the opportunity to have a coach to teach us one-on-one, but with the Future Fitness app, it's like having a personal trainer in your living room. From February 11th onwards, you can try the Future Fitness app for only $19 for the first month. Think of what you can accomplish during that first month. So go on and hit my link at tryfuture.co/GEB to get started. Now, if you're interested in learning more about Vince Gironda's approach to bodybuilding, his principles, and all these tips of wisdom that he has, but to be honest, these 3 books, I believe, which I call the Classic Physique Bundle, are the best books that Vince ever came out with. And they, of course, are the Wild Physique, the Master Series, and the Pro Series. Have a look at it this way. The Wild Physique, I believe, is like the ABCs of Vince Gironda's principles to bodybuilding. He teaches you the exercises and his principles, but how do you put them together? Well, the Master Series is a 14-month program of using all of these principles, all of the diets that Vince came out with, all of the exercises. And of course, the Pro Series was a book that he came out with later on, specially targeted for getting into competition. It's just these 3 books, as I call it, the Classic Physique Bundle, Vince's best work, and available, of course, at www.goldenerabookworm.com.